Hi, I'm Barb Sanger with the South Park Site Stewards, and we're a nonprofit organization of volunteers that monitor archaeological sites in South Park. People have been in South Park and traveling South Park for more than 10,000 years. They were nomadic. They practiced a nomadic lifestyle. They were hunters and gatherers, and they left behind artifacts and features that begin to tell the story of their heritage and culture. Okay, there we go. Artifacts are objects made by man that he used pretty much throughout their days. Objects like scrapers and drills that were used for hide processing. There's grinding stones and hammer stones that they would use for food preparation, and a lot of projectile points that were attached to spears and darts. Ooh, wrong one. No? Okay. Also features, and features are objects that they made but that can not be transported. So a lot of rock cairns that were used for hunting blinds, or sometimes linear for direction arrows, things like that. Sometimes they had spiritual purposes. We'll find these a lot of times on an upper ridge, and when we get there and you look around, it just takes your breath away. And maybe that's what created a vision quest site for some of these indigenous people. We also had a bedrock mortar that we just found this year. We found the grinding stone first, and then we looked down, and there was this huge piece of bedrock that you could see the grinding patterns that they used. We can kind of tell on the the projectile points, the age of them, by how they were manufactured. So 10,000 years ago in the Paleo-Indian period, the points were longer, typically 4 to 6 inches long. They were very thick, and they were used those to hunt the mammoths and the woolly mammoths and the bison. Then the archaic period, a little bit later, goes from about 8,000 to years ago to 1800. Those points were smaller. They had different ways that they attached to the darts, and a lot of atlatl or atlat materials, projectile points that were used in hunting. They were thinner. They learned also that they could heat treat the stone, and it made it harder, better for, again, hunting purposes. And also, the heat treating made it easier to flint knap and get those sharp, pointy edges. And then we had the late prehistoric, went from 1850 to 500 years ago, and the projectile points were much, much smaller because they attached to arrows, and the bows and arrows were introduced from the east, and so it just, they didn't need to be near as big. So as we look at how the artifacts and features relate to each other and with the land, archaeologists can learn how people traveled and traded as they went through South Park. A lot of times they'll come over the mountain passes, but the occupation sites are around the edges of the mountains, close to water. As volunteers in a site stewardship program, we collect data and provide insight to the history and the culture of these indigenous people. We work with the BLM, the Forest Service, Parks and Wildlife in teams that go to designated sites, and we use a lot of photography, GIS mapping. We have site assessment forms. So we use tablets, and that's already loaded with a site assessment form, and we're able to say if there's what the site is looking like. Changes to sites can be done by nature, whether it be a wildfire, flooding, a lot of erosion, lightning. We had lightning hit a tree and covered the entire portion of a site. We also have changes that are done by man. A lot of vandalism, total destruction of that nice cairn that I originally showed you. We'd been monitoring it for probably 7 or 8 years, and a couple years ago we went up and someone had knocked out the back side of it. There were cigarette butts and broken beer bottles on the interior of the cairn, which is really kind of sad, because we've lost a lot of the history. We do monitor some historical sites, the Magnolia Mill over there. In 1 year, it was full of horrible, horrible graffiti. And so we notified the landowner, and they were able to make those changes. When we're done monitoring our sites and we record if there were any changes, what those changes might be, if there are impacts, we put it on here. We also can take photos, and then we send those to the landowner, so they're able to stay in touch with what's going on in there on their sites. Once we're done monitoring, a lot of times we have extra time, so we'll just noodle around and we'll find more artifacts. And so we have on our tablets as well a GIS program from Esri that downloads a site and all the maps. It's a topographical site, then with land ownership on it. And so when we find an artifact, we just add the button, it brings up a form like this. We're then able to, I could have done that there, but again, click on, it already has the GPS coordinates exactly where we are. We can enter artifact, we can enter what kind of artifact it is, whether it's a point or a stone, what the material is, how big it is, and if there's any other distinguishing features. We can also attach pictures to that record, and we then save it, and then it collects in our database. That again is a huge system, and I'm not hitting the right buttons here, sorry about that. But anyway, so we're able to take that out. Next time we go to the same site, it shows all the records and the artifacts that we found before, and we can go and see if this is a new point. Again, different photos, things like that. We also, as site stewards, do special projects. One of them is a paleobotanical research project. In the lower right-hand corner is a site that we worked with Dr. Susan Bender on a number of years ago. It was an excavation site, and about 100 bags of soil were tagged in a grid system. We now sieve through each of those 100 bags to work out the soil, and then we get a small portion of the remains that we send to a paleobotanist who does the analyzation of that soil for plant materials. Sometimes she'll find some carbon, sometimes some flakes, some kinds of different stones. And so what it does is it just expands the record of what that site was. And we also had a drone project. So we had a drone out to several of our sites. We see the topography of the land completely different from 20, 30 feet up in the air. We'll see the rock formations. We can see some teepee rings. There is in that lower picture is a stone cairn out on one of the sites made by sheep herders. It's about 10 feet tall, and so we've never been able to see the top of it, but the drone gave us another perspective. Another project that we're really working on this year is photogrammetry, and it is a process of reconstructing an object. In this case, we're working on projectile points and stone features. So we'll take a picture out in the field, and we're able to reconstruct a 3D program of that. And gosh, where does that lead? Perhaps to virtual site visits, virtual museums for people that can't get out in the field. It's also a way of preserving that artifact. For historical, for preservation, for museums as well. Another really fun thing that we do is Archaeology Day in Fairplay. This year we had over 200 visitors come by, and we had 8 or 9 different interactive booths where they learned about stone tools and the archaeology in South Park. And we had great volunteers that help us with that, and Community Connections, Jessica and Jasmine, are one of them. So welcome, Jasmine and Jessica.
All right, so my name is, hello. Yeah. Okay, so we are Community Connections. My name is Jessica. I'll introduce myself here on the next slide, but we've been an organization, we're an LLC based out of Denver, Colorado. We have been working since 2019. We do project design, creativity, and interpretation of different projects and specialized services. So that tells you not much, but we both are field archaeologists, and we really wanted to bring archaeology to the community in a bigger and brighter way. So we use these types of projects to get the community involved with archaeology and history. So I've been an archaeologist in the field, mostly the cultural resource management field, for about 10 years now. I got interested in archaeology. I don't know if anybody here has seen The Mummy, but I saw The Mummy when I was little, and I absolutely loved it. So that was kind of how I began my journey. My favorite part of archaeology, we were actually just talking about this a little bit ago, it's when you find something on the ground, you pick it up, you realize somebody was the last person, left it there, who made it or whatever. And it's such like a handshake into the past of just like, wow, it's almost like someone just walked around the corner and left it there. So that's one of my favorite parts of archaeology. I love traveling. I love quesadillas. My favorite color is green. And I will let Jasmine introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Jasmine Saxon. I'm originally from Tennessee, and I came out here to pursue my master's at University of Denver, and I graduated in 2018 with a master's in anthropology, concentration in archaeology. And I've been working for a few years out here doing field work, seasonal work. And I actually got interested in archaeology when I was about 12, kind of crazy at that age that I knew exactly what I wanted to do. But I got into an ambassadorship program, and I was able to go to England, Ireland, and Wales for like 10 days. And so I was able to stay with host families. I got to go to the castles and see all these great ruins. And my mind was exploded at 12 years old. I was like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, people used to live in castles. And like, it was just, it totally sparked this passion and love for finding out more about how people lived and worked a long, long time ago. And so when I came home, I expressed this to my parents, and they were like, that's archaeology. Thank goodness they knew what archaeology is, because a lot of people don't. Actually, 49% of people in America think that we study dinosaurs. So, so fortunately I got on the right path from a very early age. I think my favorite part of archaeology, again, is it's really the storytelling. So if you've ever watched a really good movie or read a really great book, like, it draws you in, right? And I feel like that is what is so cool about archaeology, is there's these tangible pieces of the past that draw you in, that make it personal for you and whoever was in the past. You, like Jess said, you get that handshake. So it's just really exciting to continue to explore our resilience as humanity and what we've been doing on this earth for so long. I love to travel as well. I think as archaeologists, we love to travel in general. We just love to go explore. I love to camp. I have a huge English Mastiff and a husband, and we live in Denver. And I love to cook. I love to eat food. It's the best. All right. So I'm going to talk about our first course that we created in collaboration with South Park Site Stewards. It's called South Park Obsidian, Unearthing the Past, the Story of Obsidian. This project actually came about, we were talking with South Park Site Stewards about some of the science and things that they have been doing, and they actually had sourced some obsidian quite a few years ago from South Park to figure out where obsidian is coming from. So if you're not familiar with the archaeology of this area, obsidian is not a common resource here in Colorado. If you find it, it's usually been brought in from somewhere. And so this study was to figure out where is this obsidian coming from, and they had sourced it down to the Valles Caldera in New Mexico, which is a massive caldera, very famous. They've actually sourced obsidian all over the nation from this area, so people were moving and grooving back in the day, moving that stuff all around the place. And so we were trying to think of brainstorming ways of, okay, this is really cool information, but how do we get it out? Like, how do we tell the public this is cool? And how do we get them engaged with this history and archaeology? And so, again, I think our previous I'm sorry, I cannot remember your name. The Mr. High, yes. She was talking about getting into like the kids, right? Because if kids get this love and passion, I'm a great example at 12 years old. I'm still doing this, right? So if we can get to the kids and the kids get excited, the adults are going to get into it as well, and hopefully we're grooming future cultural resource people through these types of educational outreach programs. So throughout this program, we talk about science, we talk about culture, and we talk about archaeology kind of throughout the whole course. So what is obsidian? How is it made? We start with the science, right? Where does obsidian come from? How is it made? What is a caldera? And throughout the entire course, we have fact sheets that you can download and keep. We have videos, we have pictures, we have as many multimedia things as we could pack in here because they're kids. We want them to be engaged. We want them to be excited. There needs to be all of these elements coming together. So as you can see on the right-hand side, there's that South Park Obsidian fact sheet. Very simple, very basic, but it just goes through, how is a caldera made, what is obsidian, and what are stone tools, kind of this little simple chronological order of how things happen. So we also talk about culture and archaeology, right? So how past people used obsidian. We actually found this really cute little video, which I'm not going to play for you guys now, but it's on YouTube, and it's actually from the UK, and there's all these little kids, and they go to the London Museum, and they learn about flint knapping. And it's just a really awesome, fun little video, but the reason we chose this was because they're kids, and kids want to learn from other kids. They're relatable. Just like as adults, when you find someone that has similar interests and background and is the same age, it's more relatable. So we're also using this strategy as we build these courses to think about what kids are going to relate to, what's going to make them excited. And then, of course, flint knapping leads into stone tools. So Jess and I were fortunate enough to do some archaeological survey out in Utah, and out there it is plentiful. I've never seen so much obsidian in my life. It was just like fields of obsidian. It was beautiful. But we were able to get a ton of pictures and things of obsidian flakes and tools, and so we were able to actually give examples of what some of those things look like for the kids. All right, so we can't talk about obsidian without talking about volcanoes, and we can't talk about volcanoes without building volcanoes, right? Like, these are kids. Let's get dirty. Let's do creative stuff. So Jess and I had a blast doing this. We actually made every single volcano that you see a recipe for here on the screen, starting out with the simple soda bottle volcano, which you'll see here on the left. And then they kind of get more, well, the paper mache is pretty involved, and the homemade flower volcano is pretty cool too. But it just gives the kids different options, especially maybe they don't have an adult doing this with them. And so we wanted to give options as to, we still want you to have fun and engage and understand the concept of volcanoes. So that's why we have these different options here. And on the right-hand side, you can see our paper mache volcano that we made in progress. And this actually became such a cool tool. We had no idea how popular this volcano would be, but we started to bring this around. In the previous slide, you couldn't see because of the little screen on our screen there. But in the corner, there was a picture of Jess and I at Archaeology Day with our volcano. And so what we did, we used this as a way to talk about archaeology, to talk about stone tools, to talk about obsidian. So Archaeology Day, we brought our volcano. We had plenty of, we used red Jello for the coloring, vinegar, and baking soda. We had like Costco size ones because we were like, we're doing this, So we did all of our little demonstrations for the kids, and come to find out, the adults are just as excited about volcano explosions as kids are. So not only did it open the door to talk to kids about archaeology, cultural resources, history, heritage, all those amazing things, but it also opened the door for adults to start having these conversations with us as well. And so we're just so thrilled that we were able to be a part of this project, and how it turned out this volcano was just the most amazing thing to bring to events. So it's awesome. At the end of each of our course, we do a little course conclusion. For this one, we did some Let's Dig Deeper questions. So you'll see here on the right, just some of these questions are super simple. How sharp is obsidian? Some of them are a little bit more in depth. It's like, how does the science of sourcing obsidian work? So we're trying to hit, different age ranges throughout these questions. Some of them will be more simple, some of them will be more complex. We've also got extra resources, so this is also a downloadable resource where we've listed a ton of online resources that you can go and explore more about obsidian and volcanoes and archaeology. And we've placed a little fun little notepad there for you, so if you find some of your favorites, you can keep track of them. So Jess is going to tell you about our second course.
Okay, so our second course we did this year, so we just finished it in about June-ish. It's the South Park Stone Tool course. So Stone Tools, a global connection. We took a cool approach. Barb and us, we were kind of brainstorming this year, like how do we want to go about making a kids course? Like there's so much archaeology here. How can we tie it all in together? So we took the aspect of bringing in a global connection to show that people across the globe were using stone tools. So we bring in hunting, gathering, and then we'll show you some of the stone tools in the end. This course specifically is for grades 5 and up. So there's a lot more words involved. We have all these definitions here, so we go into indigenous, there's a lot of cultural aspects that we need to bring in to be able to describe why people are using certain stones and whatnot. So, of course, what is archaeology? So that's the study of humans and what they leave behind, basically. So we've got fun little diagrams and whatnot, and then we go into the hunters and gatherers and the nomadic lifestyle that they lived around here. Okay, so hunters and gatherers, they were nomadic groups across the world. There still are hunter-gatherers in the world today, as we all know. This is just an example of the Hiwi diet. So we go into the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and like how did hunter and gatherers use stone tools and the tools that they created to do their life on a day-to-day basis. What was so fun about this project was that, so all of the artifacts that you see here on out are actually pictures from the repository here. So we were able to come up for a day and go through a bunch of the boxes and see what South Park Repository has. they have a lot of cool things. The South Park Site Stewards and many entities who have worked in the South Park area have collected things throughout the years. So there's petrified wood, there's different types of cherts and obsidian, as Jasmine had mentioned. And Barb, of course, had some of the pictures that they find in the field of what's still out there. Yeah, we saw projectile points, arrowheads, dart points, the bigger ones from years past. We had knives and choppers. We had scrapers as well. So while you might not think, since we don't have the pyramids here, or we don't have this grandiose archaeology that people think of when they think of archaeology, we have such a rich history of what's here and the lifestyles that people just left behind and thought they were coming back to. So there's a plethora of artifacts that are around that are just really cool to see. Okay, so these are some of the worksheets and examples. So we've got the questions, what's the point, play on words, scraping away at history. We've got scrapers, and we pull in every single type of artifact. So every single projectile point, we had something from across the globe. Every single scraper, we bring in scrapers from 40,000 years ago in France. We had a bunch of different things that we could pull in from around the globe, since there's such a plethora of artifacts. Then we go into gathering. So gathering is when people collect things they need for their everyday lives. And this is one of the examples that we have here. So in the South Park area, there were definitely bison and plentiful amounts of plant material. So us going on a hike, we might not think that, oh, the root on that flower is edible. Oh, if we take up a bunch of these flowers and whatnot, it'll be a great meal. But people back then knew all of this, and they were able to access all of, this was their backyard, so they were able to get into all of this. More things from the repository. So we have a matate fragment on the left. We've got a drill in the center, so you can drill through leather to weave and do all that. We also have a mono on the right-hand side, so when they're grinding up the roots that I just mentioned, or some of the plants, you can do residue analysis on these and see what kind of plants they might have been grinding up. As Jasmine had said in the previous course, we have all of the resources, and we've got our little reference sheets. So we're connecting communities together through history and archaeology, and showing you and the student who takes this course how impressive the world around them is, like just in their backyard. This is being used from here to Africa, to Alaska, to Asia, all over the world. And it's just something really cool that we get to see across the board. So with that being said, this is a QR code if you'd like to scan it to get to the courses. The courses are free. South Park Site Stewards was able to get grants to provide these courses for you all. So you can also access the course on our website, communityconnections.biz. And then this is our information. We thank you all so very much for listening to our talk today. South Park Site Stewards on the right, Jasmine and I, Community Connections on the right, or left, vice versa. And that is all. Thank you so much.
Does anyone have questions? Yes.
There's increasing recognition of the value of indigenous knowledge to complement traditional Western science. I was wondering to what extent you all work with some of the native tribes, the Utes and others who might have been here.
Barb, do you want to answer that?
We do a little. Most everything that we monitor is 5,000 years old. That's pretty much what we're finding here. Occasionally we'll find, I this year found a paleo point, so it's 10,000 years old. Gives you the chills when you pick something up and you know that no one's touched that for 10,000 years. It's just, again, the handshake, going back in time. We'll come to the sites, and they're just beautiful. And that is before that there were pretty much tribal affiliations at this point in time, and those were, I think, started about 1,000 years ago. We would welcome working with people, but we have not reached out to them purposely at this point in time because we don't find the connection just yet. But yeah, I know some sites that we just started working with the BLM on, and they do some incredible collaboration with Native tribes. So maybe that'll be an open door for us to say, hey, let's work together on this. So does that answer your question? Yeah.
Also, across archaeology in general, archaeologists do try to work with tribes across the board, but oftentimes what's unfortunate is that the tribes are understaffed, underpaid, so it's kind of difficult to get the bridge connected, but it is across the board happening. It's just not on the scale we would like, but
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So is Community Connections an archaeology company or?
Great question. Yes. So we are not a cultural resource management firm. We don't go out and do field work like on the BLM, National Forest Service. We don't bid on projects like that. This is another approach to archaeology. This is all community facing. So this is just one of many projects that we've done with nonprofits and community organizations. We've done, public tours like at the Astor House down in Golden, which is a historic hotel. They're refurbishing that property, so they wanted someone to come out and share the history with the community before they started all this renovation. So we went out for 2 days, gave free public tours, did all the historical background on that. That's one of our projects. We're also working with the Lakewood Historical Society out in Lakewood, Colorado, and they're implementing a citizen archaeology program through the Historical Society for people doing xeriscaping in their yards. So they applied for grant funds, and so we've created this citizen archaeology handbook for them. So it's all archaeology, but it's just a very different take on doing more community-driven facing projects, finding out what the community finds valuable, and then really highlighting that and making it accessible to community members. Is that a good answer for you?
No, it's a wonderful.
Okay. All right.
Very unique.
It is.
More for the presenter, are these slideshows going to be available to attendees or available for download after the presentation?
Yeah.
I mean, you can have ours if you want it. Yeah.
We're also recording, and we will send the recording of the event out to all of the attendees.
Yes.
Do you want to kind of build some volcanoes?
Absolutely. We would love to do that. We love working with kids.
We have regular school programs. We also have like a homeschool group that joins us every month and we do different things with.
Yeah.
We're into messy and cool, so.
Okay. We'll chat
Let's
for
talk.
sure. Yeah. Yeah. Anyone else? Yes.
So how do you balance the need to educate people about archaeology and discover the archaeology of someone like Park County, balance that with the need to protect sites from vandalism or from people who might collect arrowheads or things like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a line that fine line, very fine line. We have to be very careful and cognizant about how we're presenting this information. And a lot of ethical things go into this as well. So in all of our content, and you'll see this if you get into our courses, there's always a section that talks about the importance of our heritage, how it's irreplaceable. These things do not have monetary value because you cannot replace them. And it's our job as a collective community to protect this. So we are very serious and passionate about continuing to put that message out there. We'll do whatever we can to make it accessible, but we are also very cognizant that these resources are precious and we do need to protect them. So part of our education and outreach is getting this message out there, because a lot of times what we find, like with collectors, for example, that do collect arrowheads and have 10,000 pieces of whatever in their home, they're not collecting because they want to destroy it. They're collecting because they love it. You don't collect something because you want to make it worse, right? You collect because it's something that is meaningful to you. So it's not that they're bad. They just don't understand that what they're doing impacts the rest of the community. And I think that we definitely, this is a huge passion of ours, is that educational component so that people become more aware that if they are pocketing things or taking things home, it really takes, like if you have a puzzle, it takes all those pieces out, and we can only get so much of the picture now. So, good question. We're always working on it.
Yeah, there's collector communities. I guess I don't know if my voice is louder here or not, but there's collector communities who obviously collect to pillage and sell. Then there's also collector communities who will go out with GPS units, take points on what they are collecting. And I know South Park Site Stewards, we never give locational information out whatsoever. So we protect as much as we can. So.
And we just hope educating as much as we can through Archaeology Day, getting out talking to kids and adults, so that the kids will say, no, Mom, you can't take that.
Yeah.
Because we learned, that's our history. It's like taking a page out of the book. The last page, So we're hoping that the more we talk and the more we get out there. Archaeology used to be a very closed science, and nobody talked about it because nobody wanted anybody to know what was going on. And if we can get some armchair archaeologists out there, retired people, that we could get a link to them where someone could take a photo with their camera. Instead of picking up that artifact, they take a photo of it and send it to this armchair archaeologist who can say, oh, that is really cool. This is what we know about it. And if we can run that through 3D programs, through photogrammetry, and it becomes a virtual artifact, a virtual museum of what's out there, it's totally cool. And we just did a mono in 3D. And we got it last week.
Yeah.
And it's awesome.
It's cool.
It's just really, really cool. So, we'll have it up later on my iPad. So, but yeah, it's just getting the word out and just hoping that, it catches on. Like recycling, we used to recycle.